Hello. One of the most important things to do when making astrological predictions is to emphasize what a person should do to get a positive outcome. In vibrational astrology, our understanding is that the astrology does not tell us exactly what will happen. It would be wonderful if it did. So, suppose there's an election, like there was recently an election in the United States for President of the United States, Joe Biden versus Donald Trump. It would be great if we could look at the astrological configurations and say Joe Biden will win, or whatever our forecast is, and to have a degree of confidence in it. What we can actually do better than be certain about who will win is what Joe Biden needs to do to win, what Donald Trump needs to do to win, and also what circumstances could happen in the world that would change the likelihood of who will win. So the power and the beauty and the benefit of vibrational astrology is not that we know what will happen, but that we know what to do to get a positive result. And let me give you an example of this. Yesterday was January 2021, Inauguration Day, the day that the new president officially takes office and Joe Biden officially became the active president in the United States. And there was a lot of concern that there would be violence, and I had predicted that violence is very, very likely. Now, what I could have stated better in my forecast is, rather than say, first off, oh, there will be violence, and then secondly, I said things like, well, on the other hand, the violence could be prevented if certain things happen. It's good to include right straight away exactly what needs to be done to get what particular outcome. So a good way to express the forecast would be this: isolated but intense expressions of violence are likely on January 20th, 2021, unless security agencies and agencies like the FBI conduct massive and effective operations to prevent it. Because what we're seeing in the astrology, and let's look at it for a second, is in the 8 vibration chart. Mars and Uranus are conjunct, Saturn and Neptune are conjunct, and at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, Sun and Moon are conjunct. And the Saturn-Neptune is right at the midpoint between the Sun and Moon and Mars-Uranus. This is an explosive combination, and what can trigger an explosion, an eruption, is concerns about whether people are sincere, whether they're hypocrites. Saturn-Neptune, are you true? Are you real? Are you deep? Are you honest about what your ideals and visions and hopes are? And there's a lot of concern that there's hypocrisy, that there was voter fraud, people are not following the basic tenets of what democracy should be, or whatever. There are lots of feelings of fraud, or and insincerity and hypocrisy. These are keywords for Saturn Neptune, trying to get beneath those things. So what I saw is, oh my gosh, this is a recipe for a disaster, because we have the issue highlighted with the explosive Mars-Uranus combination. But what could prevent violence from breaking out over people's concerns about hypocrisy and insincerity about the dreams and hopes of the nation? There's always, let me underscore that, there is always a positive way. There is always a resolution to a problem. Or maybe I'll have to say almost always. I mean, realistically, when it comes to psychological issues or strategic issues, they're fundamentally, there really is always a way. What would prevent it? Well, a number of things. One of them would be a very comprehensive, extensive, professionally conducted, effective security measures and investigations to find out where these eruptions can occur, to block the possibility of them happening. That would be an obvious thing to do, and that's exactly what happened. The security measures were extreme. the not only the Capitol building in Washington D.C., but in most states, huge fences were put up. Lots of police and National Guard and different security people brought in huge numbers. And let me read this quote here that from an article. I've got the full website on a slide. I'll show you in a second. The FBI has received nearly 45,000 digital media tips that are now being reviewed. This is an article on January 16th. So the amount of information that was coming in, the amount of effort that was going into it, enormous. Thousands and thousands and thousands of hours of effort of going through information to find out what these potential sources of violence are and to stop them before they happen. Physical impediments, and there are stories about some of the successes. Here's a little 15-minute video. I'll show you the slide with the website address if you want to watch these things. This is a little video on a person in Georgia who had bombs, who had everything set up and ready to go to evidently to go into the White House and blow it up, or blow up some section of it. So, these things are real, they were happening, and a huge amount of effort was expended and was successful in stopping these things. So my point is this: what does vibrational astrology tell us? It tells us what the momentum is, what the forces are, what the concerns are of the people at a given time. And this dynamic energy to now, right now, let's get rid of the insincerity. Let's get rid of the hypocrisy. Let's make a difference. That was the theme. It does not necessarily have to lead to violence. Also, there was violence. It didn't receive a lot of media attention yet, but in, let's see, where are we here? Here's in Portland, Oregon, a violence broke out in the afternoon. Here are some of the people that were arrested. And there are pictures that look like war zones of, the explosive things that people had. So that was going on in Seattle. There was also some violence. So things did break out even despite all of the measures taken. But my main point is this, is simply, let's go back to our PowerPoint, is simply that when we make forecasts, the best thing to do is every time we make the forecast to include with that forecast what the conditions are, what the decisions made by people are, what actions they've taken that made particular outcomes possible. Because any outcome can occur, positive or negative, depending on what people do. In this case, the United States did all the right things. And sometimes when you do all the right things, nobody notices. It doesn't get in the headlines because nothing happened. There wasn't, as much violence as people thought there might be, even though there was some. So we don't hear about it, but it doesn't mean the energy wasn't there. It doesn't mean there weren't thousands of hours and thousands of people working to make the violence not occur. Okay, again, main point is that what VA tells us is what will happen. And I did, in my forecast, I did say what the options are, but I did not sufficiently emphasize the options that are available and what to do to get a positive outcome. I keep telling myself to do this, and I keep forgetting. I haven't gotten in the habit to consistently, when I do a forecast, first and foremost, emphasize what the people should do, or the person, if I'm forecasting for an individual, to get a positive outcome. What kinds of outcomes are possible, depending on what behavior is taken. So here's the website address for that one article I just showed you. Here's the website address for that video that I just showed you. And this is interesting. In Oregon, in the violence that occurred there, in the protests and so on, one of the signs said, we don't want Biden, we want revenge. So this emphasizes what I had forecasted is that the violence on January 20th, unlike the violence on January 6th, would come not primarily from Trump supporters. And that's exactly what happens. Okay, so here's another article, and I give a website at the bottom, thedenverpost.com, of a bit of violence that occurred in Denver. So there were things going on that even with all the prevention and efforts that were made to stop violence, there was some. Well, that's it, my friends. Again, let me go back to this first slide. Bottom line, it's very important when forecasting to keep in mind what it is we are actually doing in vibrational astrology. We don't have a crystal ball that knows what events will occur in the future. We do have a crystal ball that tells us what the momentum is, what the motivation is, what the themes are, and what people need to do to get a positive result. And sometimes people will surprise us by doing better than we think they would or doing worse than they think they would. I had not anticipated that the United States government would bring to bear on this situation such a huge security movement to stop this, and the FBI would be so effective, but they did, and it worked. Now, maybe my interpretation of what happened and why it happened is not right. Maybe, nobody's going to agree about all these things. There's so many variables, it's so complex. We don't need to get into debates about that. What's really important in this video that I'm emphasizing is just when you make a prediction, give the options straight off, right at the top of this will happen if X, Y, and Z occur. So if somebody says, who's going to win the next election in France, in Italy, in Canada, in the United States, or who's going to win this sporting event, it's not as beautiful and simple and exciting to people to say if then. If this candidate does X, Y, and Z, he or she will win. Or if these conditions occur, this person will win. But it works much better, and it's more accurate, it's more realistically, because the power and beauty and benefit of vibrational astrology is it tells us what to do. It tells us what the energy is, and it's up to us to make the right decisions. From my point of view, overall, the government agencies and the individuals and the volunteer groups overall did the right thing on January 20. They did the wrong thing on January 6th. So all of that effort was needed. We don't know what would have happened if there wasn't all of the security measures, if the FBI didn't do all those investigations. Maybe it was a waste of time. Maybe I'm wrong. But the way I'm seeing it with the astrology is that all of that was needed. Okay, my friends, thank you very much for listening. God bless. Namaste.